Okay, so my question's for you. So we have Aron here from Kifaru. He's somewhat legendary in most circumstances when it comes to traditional archery, or do you just call it trad or trad curious?
Compounds. If it's like taking out the garbage or taxes, I'm not good at that. But anything to do with a bow, I got her nailed down.
And these bows were sent to us from, where did you buy yours?
I bought it from South.
Did you? Okay, yeah, same. From where?
South Cox, it's Stalker Sticks.
Stalker Sticks, right. Yeah, so we got these from Stalker Sticks. They sent them out. So they sent one to myself, Logan, and then one to you, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So thank you very much for the Stalker Sticks. These are rad. I typically only shoot this in my backyard because I live in the city. It's 20 yards away. I don't have a very big yard. And it's one of those things that I can kind of hit foam, watch my girls. Our chickens are running around. It's pretty chaotic, but it's super fun. I'm typically shooting out here. I almost exclusively only shoot my compound bow. At home, this stays right next to the back door, and I just fuck around with this when I'm at the house. So tell us a few things about what we should know, not for like the very beginner, but when you're first starting trad, what are some of the things you can think of?
So one of the things is going to be the length of your bow.
Okay.
Compared to your draw length. If your bow is short, you're going to get a lot of string pinch. So when you draw this back, that V will be tight and you'll get string pinch. The other thing is the limbs. When they make these limbs, the length of the limb and the length of your draw length needs to be commensurate in line with the bow, otherwise it'll stack. So if I was really short and shooting a really long bow, I'm not pulling the bow or the limb back to where it would be, the limb would be half drawn and it would be stacking at half draw because I'm short with a long bow. If I'm really tall the other way around and the limb is really flexing, it's stacking on the other end. So you need to make sure and get the right limb length and poundage. A lot of people are overbowed. Compound and a recurve or longbow are way different. With a compound, you have that initial hump and then it drops over. With this, there's no let off, and so you have to shoot quite a bit less weight. The next thing is just general form. A lot of people watch like the older Howard Hill guys where they touch their face and let it go, and that's really not as accurate as you could be if you follow more of the NTS or the power system, which is really drawing back, holding, executing back tension and shooting. All of that takes a lot of practice and it's kind of a pain in the butt, which is what to work on today. So poundage, the length of the bow that you want, and then obviously the rest, the form and the setup tuning, all of that comes into play, but we would be here 4 hours if I went over all that stuff.
Yeah, I think, but where have you done a lot of the, have you talked a lot about traditional shooting and a lot of your other content?
Yeah.
Where do they find that content?
So you can find both compound and traditional on Kifarucast YouTube page, and then the Kifarucast podcast. There's all kinds of stuff on there, but if you look at the title, there's a lot with Tom Klum from Rocky Mountain Specialty Gear. Those are the guys that took me under their wing to basically catapulted me. I've only been doing traditional archery like 4 years. They catapulted me. So the videos we do with them are really good. And there's other outlets, the Push Archery, they have a lot of info on there, and that helps out quite a bit. But that'll only get you so far. After that, you got to get a coach. A coach is going to be a big help. It's no different. You may have natural ability to shoot a pistol, but you're not going to be as good as if you get a professional instructor. They're going to take you to another level. So.
Well, and that was the big thing for today, was I wanted to introduce Aron for people that haven't necessarily been exposed to him, or maybe they've seen you, but they don't know the depth of knowledge and some of the information that you've gone into, and be able to direct them towards that. One of the things that I love about, Aron, Kifaru, just in general, is, one, I've been a consumer of Kifaru for over a decade. We were having stories today about me going into the shop out in Colorado, like 2008-ish. So they make some pretty incredible gear. I should say they make some epic gear, and he's putting out some fucking incredible content too. So go check out Kifarucast. Check out Kifaru, check out Aron. Follow him across social media. Let's shoot some bows, man. Let's just fucking sling some arrows. All right, welcome to Free Range American. We're going to watch Aron put in a big old fatty.
Big old dip.
Big old fatty.
Oh, crap.
No, that's the way we roll, man. Well, thanks for coming out. Aron Snyder from Kifaru. I appreciate you coming out. We've been friends for a long time. We first had you on the Launch Code podcast. You and Gritty were on like way back.
16.
Was that 16?
Yeah, I think so. End of 16 or beginning of 17. No, it might have been in the beginning of 16 because it was right when I first started shooting recurve. Long ago. Yeah.
It was. You know, the funny thing is when we were walking around, I was thinking about it. That was right after I bought this building. So this was like, we're here in Salt Lake. I just bought the building back in 2016. You came in and my cousin Dirk Durham had come in because everybody was in town for
Western Hunt.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And I hadn't just started shooting a recurve. I had been shooting one for quite a while. I can't really say that I exercise very high degree of proficiency with it.
Lots of
he just pointed out.
It's loft is what there's loft in there.
There's loft.
Yeah. Do you know what the acronym is? You might punch me. It's
do it.
Lack of fucking talent. Sorry. Everybody's got a lot of loft.
Yeah,
it takes a while to work that out.
That's fantastic.
That's about right. Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, I'm gonna use that. I first started shooting this recurve. I was gonna tell you why and how I actually got into archery. A lot of guys are, they've heard this story, but I was working in my roaster in my other building, and I was in the middle of spreadsheet hell. And one of my buddies was like, "You have to get into archery. You'll love it."
Need like an outlet.
Yeah. So I went down to I think it's Wild Arrow. Is that what it's called? What's that archery shop here in town?
I think
there's a couple.
I think Wild Arrow's one.
Yeah.
Sounds like,
It's out in Bountiful. And we were looking at bows, and compound bows just freaked me out because they had too much shit going on. I was like, I can't put another crazy hobby in my pocket, especially when I'm trying to run this business.
Yeah.
So I figured a stick and a string with another stick. I was like, that looks pretty simple. I'm going to be able to figure this out.
That'll be easy.
I stuffed a bunch of burlap coffee bags from old, bags, 60 kilo bags of coffee, green coffee. I'd stuffed a bunch of those in there. And that was my target. And I just shoot it from 10 yards away. Had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm all fucked up, basically.
Yeah. Well, and that happens, and I got started, and people heard this story. It'll be extremely short, but I shot compound. I shot tournaments. In fact, when Dudley was younger, 2001 or 2, we figured this out later. He and I were at the same tournaments. They used to have Cabela's tournaments. And anyway, so shot compound forever. And I didn't do the, life got in the way. I shot tournaments locally and some nationally, not a lot. Well, I did a podcast on ethical shooting distances, speeds, like God forbid the voice of reason step in. I just broke it down mathematically. If my arrow's doing 300 feet out of the compound, how long does it take to get to a target at 70 yards compared to an arrow doing 170?
Right.
The traditional archery community did not like that, and I got a lot of hate mail. And at that point, I'd never shot a traditional bow. This was in 2016,
right,
or 15.
What's the difference between? Sorry to pause you, but what's the difference between? We'll call it the speed of an arrow leaving. We'll call it a 60-pound traditional bow and a compound bow. Like what's that?
170 and 280, so 110 feet roughly. Right, depends on the weight of the arrow.
Mm-hmm.
But 100 plus feet per second difference.
Right.
And so I just broke it down. So I got a ton of hate mail, and I am extremely driven by challenges.
Right.
And I just was like, fuck it. I sold all my compounds. I mean, I sold. You want to talk
serious?
about be my best friend? Everybody loved me that day. Like I had guys coming over because I had 8 or 9 compounds, bow presses, and I'm like, okay, the way that I am, I'm going full bore, right? I sold everything, and I went down to Tom Clum at Rocky Mountain Specialty Gear. I was like, dude, I'm doing this. And he was excited. And I'm like, I'm going in and I'm not, and no one really ever, not no one, but at the level I took it on at is not normal because I sold every weapon I had for a bow. He took me under his wing and off I went. And it did end up being quite a bit harder than I thought it would be. I was like, I got to get hand-eye coordination. This shit's going to be easy. And it was not easy, but I had him helping me basically.
Right.
And, now I actually picked up the compound in the middle of this last 5 years and it just wasn't the same.
Seriously.
I can't, at the risk of getting, bashed, I'm real accurate past 100. Right. And so getting to 100, 120, 80 yards to an animal, sometimes it's a pain in the butt. But, for me now, a far shot's 30. And so I've had to...
Oh, shit. Seriously? That's a far shot with your trad bow.
Well, I've shot 5 or 6 animals over 40. I hit a javelina at 57. I killed it, pinwheeled it, but I killed it. Most of the shots, my goal is sub 20.
One, you just posted a video of a goat. How close was that goat?
12 yards.
Right. Yeah.
So I shot a wolverine, which was crazy.
That video is
the goat
crazy.
one.
So I'm telling you, everybody right now,
the story
you have to go watch that video. Is it still on your Instagram?
I put it up today as a new one with some of the other photos. Well, here's the funniest part of that. My wife is awesome. She's a 6-foot Italian and she's pretty high strung. The night before, I'm shooting off the roof of my house, working on cliff shots.
Just like everybody.
I go down and I pull the arrow. I don't know what I did. I found out later. I pulled my rib into my rhomboid, dropped me like a sniper hit me. And I'm like, and I'm limping back. My wife comes down. I'm like, I can't draw. My goat hunt starts tomorrow. I'm like, I can't draw my bow. She's like, hey, just take some ibuprofen, see what happens in the morning. 4 a.m.
So your wife is basically a army medic, which is drink water, take Motrin, maybe
call home, call your mommy,
drink a canteen, here's some Motrin.
And so
Walk it off, you idiot.
Walk it off, homie.
Well, it gets even worse where she could have been a drill instructor. So the next morning I wake up, I try to draw the bow. I can get the half draw. She comes downstairs and she's like, what's up? Can you draw it? And I'm like, I can't. I said, I think I'm going to have to shoot it with a gun. And she literally grabs my shoulder and she's like, you need to find a fucking way. And I'm like, okay, that was like drinking coffee. I'm like, what? She's like, you've always found a way. Why is this any different? She's like, stab it, get close. You will regret it the rest of your life if you shoot this with a gun. She's like, you can do it. I've seen you. I shot a deer at 4 feet. She's like, you can do it. All right, well, we're not bringing the gun. So we went, I went and I'm like, well, I can't have my wife making fun of me, right? So we meet everybody there and Frank, I'm like, dude, I got to get close. And he already has to get close, right? And so he's like, okay, how close? And I'm like, feet. And he's like, how many feet? And I was like, dude, we got to get sub 10 yards. I can't draw my bow back all the way. And so he's like, Frank's as tough as they come. Like, if he would have joined the military, if you meet him, he's one of those guys that ends up in Delta. He just feels no pain. He's a machine. So we get valley floor. We're looking at these goats, and I'm like, Frank, I'm looking at him like, I think I can get close to that one. And he literally looks at me, he goes, indeed, sir. That's all he said. Starts packing his shit. So I pack mine and do a 5-point contingency plan in case things go sideways. And next thing you know, I'm 8 yards above the goat. And my wife and Luke from Gladiators is filming it from below,
right,
probably 800 yards away. And I'm like, I took my jacket off before I made the final approach. We couldn't get the goat to wake up.
Right.
And I'm like, Frank, he's 28, 30 yards. I'm like, I'm getting cold, dude. Get it up. And he's throwing rocks, popping decoys. Finally, we get it to move, and it shifted to my right. And I went to half draw, and I knew my arrow would tear right stiff.
Right.
I did some redneck ingenuity. I knew I was going to impact left. I aimed to the right side of its body, went straight through it, took its heart out, and killed it. And literally, like, Frank was like, hey, that worked out good, huh? And I'm like, yeah, dude. Like, I didn't think I thought literally I'm going to have to spear a goat, And so that's one of the many crazy things that's happened since I picked up a trad bow. But that video I just posted on my page. So
I love this story. And I'll listen to a combination of things. Like I listen to your show, obviously, on Rogan. Not obviously, but I think that was everybody probably listened to that. But I listened to Kifarucast, and your whole transition from the compound bow into traditional, and then working on stalking and the challenges that you've kind of faced along the way. It's been really, really interesting to watch from afar, right? Yeah. So I think it's one of the things that a lot of guys like me, we really do. Like, we admire the fact that you're going out there trying to get really fucking close to animals, and the amount of discipline that it takes, because, man, I'll tell you, I'm relatively new to hunting. I don't consider myself a great hunter whatsoever. I just try. That's what I do, you know?
As Frank would say, you're a good trier.
I'm a good trier. Well, I shot that elk.
Yeah.
I was just going to tell you, I shot that elk at like 94 yards. And not that I'm trying to give myself a trophy for that, but I took a little bit of heat for that because...
Well, I bet. That's how I ended up shooting a stick, with heat.
Yeah, I took some heat for that, but I didn't understand the controversy either. So I shoot out here 3-4 days a week, out to past 100 typically.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd say the guys out here are shooting a lot.
No, I shoot a lot.
A lot.
My compound...
Like, we're proficient.
Well, and that was the thing that I've heard you talk about, which I wanted to talk about, was, the ethics in hunting. And really, my take on it, and you can tell me I'm wrong. I have no problem with that. You can tell me I'm wrong on my podcast, actually. But my take on that is, if I'm shooting an 8-inch group at 100 consistently, and I'm hunting an elk, and I had the perfect conditions, by the way. Mm-hmm. Like, there's no way I could have taken that shot in any other circumstances, because I just could not get closer on these elk. I'd been hunting them for a week, been out there for a week. I kept bumping them. And I had some big bulls. I had a 400 plus that I was trying to work in. I got 30 yards in on him, and his fucking cows were everywhere. It took me 2 hours to get, quite literally, I had low crawled about a quarter of a mile at that point through this brush. And the brush was so thick, there was just no way I was going to get a shot. But I knew I was going to bump these things one way or another, because he was bedded down and I was in a shitty position. It was the last bit of daylight. I was like, well, I'm either going to have to low crawl out of here, or I'm going to have to try to get a shot off. So as soon as I got into a position where I could shoot, I was blown. I was out. And that was my story all fucking week. It was all week. Yeah. And I was miserable, man. Like, I was right on top of elk. It seemed like all week. And I had some really good big bulls. And I got bumped out these fucking muleys on another bull that I had he was sub 60. And he was, I don't know, what do you call the head bull in the herd?
Well, there's a lead cow and a herd bull.
Right.
So, yep.
So he was the herd bull. He was he was probably 350 plus, and there was probably 80 elk in the entire herd.
Yeah, not good. That's 160 eyeballs.
Yeah, it was horrible. And I had been moving on these fuckers all day.
They're all prey animals, no big deal.
Raghorns had been coming and trying to blow me out of this pocket like all freaking afternoon. And I mean, I was 4 feet away from a raghorn. He was sitting there looking over me, and the wind was just right. So he was just sitting there, and I'm like, get the fuck out of here, man. These stupid muleys had come in on the other side of the draw, and they started snorting or whatever that blowing.
Yeah.
It blew my entire op. And I was like, and they ran over this ridge, and I chased them up and around this fucking ridge, and came up on the other side, and like right at dark, I had like a 90-yard shot. And I was like, I better not take it. It's 90 yards, I better not take it. So that was this is my story. And I finally found a smaller herd. And it was flat as a board. Yeah. And it had a creek on one side. And I'd low crawled through this creek and came up and around. And he was standing broadside to me.
It's a good thing.
Flat as a board. And I got up on my knees, and the grass was just about, 16 inches tall, so I could crawl in through the grass.
Good thing you're sneaky sized.
Yeah. And I'd low crawled like 250 yards once, then backed back out, went back down into the creek, came back around. And oh, by the way, Johnny Morris from Bass Pro was videoing the whole thing because he's like, this is funny as shit. I'm watching this guy's crazy commando.
Yeah.
But it was perfect. It was perfect conditions. So I was like, I can take the shot. Well, the other thing is, and I'd explain this to somebody, I was like, I've shot hundreds of thousands, if not millions of iterations in high stressful scenarios.
Yeah.
So shooting under stress is not something new to me whatsoever. I would never recommend that scenario for people, but I feel 100% confident I could make that shot.
The issue that I don't see any issue with what you did. The issue I found, and I come at it from a very unique perspective because I've killed several animals over 100 yards.
Right.
Killed my caribou at like 127.
Holy shit.
The reason why I shoot a stick is I like it better.
Right.
I didn't do it for a moral reason.
Mm-hmm.
I started out to prove a point, and then I became addicted to it.
Right.
So
just enjoy it.
Yeah, I enjoy it, and I enjoy getting closer. I mean, I get bashed as much as you do because I not necessarily defend, but people say, oh, it looks bad for anti-hunters, which I know a lot of anti-hunters.
Mm-hmm.
They have no clue before you hunt, do you know what's ethical and what's not?
They don't know the difference between 20 yards and 120.
How far it is. They're like, it looks bad to the non-hunting community. I'm like, the non-hunting community doesn't know what's ethical and what's not. Now, wounding or whatever, a little bit different story.
Sure.
But, for me, and this has been hugely debated on many podcasts, is I'm going to take Levi Morgan, for example.
Right.
And you guys are good friends with Dudley.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Guys that can shoot extremely well. Would I want some stick bow guys shooting at me at 20 and Levi shooting me at 100? Probably going to pick the stick bow guys shooting at me at 20. Some of them. Right. Now, there's other compound guys that are like, no, shoot at me at 100. But Levi's going to hit me at 100.
Right.
Then there's they could move. Okay, well, if he's 6 times more accurate at 100 than a guy is at 30 with a recurve, and this goes several different directions.
Right.
He can shoot, right? And he shot a lot. And in a case of like what you're talking about, millions of rounds, that's not just kill houses and in training. That's also real life, combat and everything
shooting
else.
Back.
Yeah, which is way worse than an animal is can smell you and is faster, but they don't shoot back. So the worst you got to worry about is falling off a cliff or something, right?
Yeah.
So I kind of look at this in the sense of if you are capable of shooting that distance in practice and you find you're capable of shooting it in the field, you don't choke. It's going to be hard for me to argue that you shouldn't take shots. I'm like, yeah, you're good. When it's the same with a stick bow, I've gotten some flack on different distances. And, for me at this point, I just don't give a shit. And I just try to just make myself the best hunter I can be and help others not to, it's true. Like rather than sitting back in the cheap seats talking shit, I just go help guys, right?
Right.
Coach or whatever, give them info on stalking or whatever else. Because the whole long distance debate thing is, to be honest, I'm over it. I don't have time for that shit, man. It's a life suck. Like
it's a tired subject. I didn't engage too much in it because I put out my piece, which was, an elk can't shoot an RPG at me, so I'm totally fine. These things don't intimidate me. Like I'm not out in the field and
not to get your head cut off on whatever.
I'm not stressed out by hearing a bugle 8 feet away from me going, "Oh my God, this is a dinosaur." I'm not that naive. And in both elk that I took last year, one round with a 6.5 and one arrow, and my elk at 94. And my elk at 97 with a rifle. So 94 with a bow, 97 with a rifle. My elk died faster at 94 with my arrow than it did at 97 with my 6.5, which was 1 inch above the heart on both. Literally, my aiming optic is just 1 inch high for some reason because both of those animals is 1 inch above the heart. But I watched that elk make 1 lap and then 2 laps and hit the deck in a minute and a half.
Yeah.
And he was expired.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I look at it and from a guy that's been on a few hunting trips and has seen things die on multiple other scenarios in my life. Like, that's a pretty good death for that elk, to be honest with you. It's fast, it was clean, and the only thing I'm looking at as far as, the ethics and hunting conversation is, did you kill it fast, and was it a clean kill?
Yeah.
And I've seen guys.
I think a lot of those guys that are talking about ranges and ethical ranges end up being the guy that's like a dog shitting razor blades
and
at that range, because they don't understand. Like when you called me the day that you shot that elk, I didn't even ask, because I know how you perform in a clutch type of high stress scenario. But it's the same with talking to you about anything I've shot. It's like, oh, just tell me the story. It's not like, oh, were you freaking, like, because it's not a thing. But
right?
I've worked through those iterations of I'm going to freak out way back.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not worried about it. And with the amount of practice you're putting in and the amount of practice you're putting in, like, I know the technique's there. I just have to execute it.
Well, I would say, like, I'm not an advocate of traditional archery, and I'm not an advocate of long range shooting. I'm an advocate of doing what makes you fucking happy.
Right.
Like, there's enough shit going on in the world right now.
Right.
Just do what, if you want to hunt in pink underwear with a spear, I'm probably not going to be able to help you with that, but do that if that's your deal. And there's guys that hunt with a traditional bow that have never killed anything, or it takes 10 years, but they're happy.
But they love it.
Just keep doing it, right? And there's guys that their goal is to be able to shoot effectively to 120 yards with a compound. I'm here to help you do what makes you happy. When I say that, I mean, I'm going to coach you as much as I can, or tuning, or whatever I can do, because I don't look at it like the anti-hunting community looks at that, because they don't know. And I know that for a fact. I live in fucking Colorado, right? We're full of anti-hunters.
Right.
And I pose that question to a lot of, because I meet them all at photography, especially I do in photo shoots. Talk about hunting. I'm like, hey, what do you guys think is, I'm speaking Greek. They're like, I don't know what is normal, right? What's a normal distance? And most of them think 100 yards is a normal distance, not because of anything they've watched on TV. It's a football field. That's just what they think is normal, right? And, some of them, like, if you listen to Fred Bear, anything inside of 60 with a stick bow, and they were winging some arrows, right?
Yeah.
Like, they were shooting far. So again, to the point now, I'm kind of over it. And it's like, if you want to bash you or me or whatever, you got problems already. I get it. You want to talk shit online, that's fine. I'm just going to go shoot my bow, or I'm going to go, hike, or go do something and try to make my life and other people's lives better, rather than all the negativity. Because of course, you're always going to talk a little bit of shit, but really, like, if you get into traditional archery and it's part-time, all right, well, okay, maybe you might later on get into, shooting it full-time.
Right.
Getting closer. You might get addicted to getting close, like I have. The thing is no matter what you're doing, you're outdoors, you're not on a fucking computer, you're not, playing Nintendo, you're outside doing something. And I think that's more important than all the other shit people argue about, which is, as you saw, I read through those comments. I almost jumped on, and I'm like, nope, I'm not going to do it, Snyder. Stay the fuck off. Don't get involved.
Write a comment, delete it. Write a comment, delete it. All right, I'm good.
Well, I think that's just, it's funny either way. I was reading through comments today on something, and I every now and again, I'll just, out of curiosity's sake, I'll jump and just read through and scroll through, because I like to remind myself that people are fucking stupid and they think I give a shit.
Yeah.
And
it's like people watching in Boulder for me. I'm like,
it's funny.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's a sport for some people. And I think, like, great, you've got something to do in your part-time, which ultimately is negative. So I'm trying only to reinforce positive. So there's no way that I would even engage in typically negative information, especially if it's just coming from, trolls regardless, which is good for everybody, right? It's like, hey, if you're listening to the podcast, you're like, oh, I'm going to leave a negative comment. Go right ahead. I don't give a shit.
Enjoy yourself.
I'm still going to be doing this podcast.
Here's the, I tell you what, I sent you those photos and said something about the coffee gaming strength.
Yeah.
That turned into a shit show.
Really?
I had to delete. I blocked probably 20 people. And it's funny, I would block, hey, you fucking dumb shit. I mean, bad comments. And I'm like, and I'd block them, and then they'd message me on Facebook. Why'd you block me? I'm like, you called me a fucking idiot.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't I block you? I'm like, think about if you were in front of me, what would happen? Like, blocking is minimal compared to, and the thing is like, when you look at things and you're there. You were in the situation where you shot that elk. For that sheep. Is it smart to pack out a whole one? No, probably not. But prototype frame, we're 200 and some yards from the truck. We were getting ready to go. I was like, hey, strap it on the pack. Let's break this thing.
Right.
And they were like, what? And I'm like, I can pack it.
Yeah.
And they're like, are you sure? And I'm like, if you guys can get me to my feet, I want to see if the frame will break. It's part of R&D, right?
Yeah.
You drink coffee to test it before you sell it, right? Mm-hmm. So they strapped it on. They got me to my feet, and they were like, you care if we film it? And I'm like, it'll be a shit show. I didn't know how bad of a shit show, but I was like, yeah, go ahead. And literally, I had people messaging me. Now, you guys are aware of, I'm gutting a lot of animals and breaking them down every year. Yeah. I had guys messaging me how to break down an animal, how to gut an animal, how stupid I was. Now, and I look at this and I know people, let's say Brian Shaw, strongest man in the world.
Yeah. Right.
Is anybody messaging him stupid for carrying a refrigerator?
Right.
Well, okay. I'm not, and this isn't tooting my own horn. You know how much I train. I train every day. I'm in the gym every day. I have that Hit Mill X where I can deadlift or shoulder shrug as I'm packing a 50-pound weight vest to train for this.
Right.
I'm not saying everybody should do it. I'm just saying I wasn't worried. They're like, oh, you're going to twist an ankle. That's about the 30th full-bodied animal I've packed out. I'm okay, right? But I appreciate the advice, but
I got it, dog.
680 comments after I deleted some. And it literally was just to show how strong our frames are and me test it. And you want to talk about the goof troop popping in. I mean, I've got guys that kill one doe in their entire lives calling me an idiot. And I'm like, okay. And that's where, like, for me, as I'm reading through, I wanted to actually say, hey, this is, with the frame and that's not much. And I'm like, not impressed. This guy's a moron. All right, delete. Oh, this guy's an idiot. Forgot his knife. Okay, delete. Some of them were funny, right?
Yeah,
and I left them. But literally, I'm like, what is going on in people's minds? What happened to them to put them in a position to say, because it is the internet, like, what would happen if I walked up to you in the street and said, dude, I saw the way you parked. You're a fucking moron. You're going to get hit in the fucking face, right? Like, something's going to happen, but on the internet, they can get away with it.
Well, I think you're right. I think most of the time, even if that happened on the street, I've just like walked by because the person's typically, probably 450 pounds or whatever, right? And it's just like, this just isn't worth my time. And at the end of the day, I have a company to run. This is my side job.
Yeah.
I like doing this because I like running a podcast with interesting people and having conversations. It's my part-time job that I do for fun at the end of the day. So I love hunting. It's recreation for me. I love promoting hunting because I believe in conservation. I believe in the psychological health it provides. I believe in all the aspects of, from the field to the table. All of those things need to be reinforced. And I think as a community, because I can't necessarily say that I'm directly part of that because you're really into the hunting community. You're part of it. At times you've got a lot of guys like trad, shooting trad is known by the compound community as what?
A lot of the compound, it's looked down upon. Yeah, it's looked down upon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or I made that joke earlier this morning.
Yeah. Well, no, and I mean, I took a ton of abuse because I called it a struggle stick, which like South Cox, guy that built your bow stalker, he was like, I agree. It's a badge of honor if you can get close enough, and it is more difficult to shoot something with a stick. And just like a rifle is easier than a compound, whatever. And again, like, I just look at it like, look, this is free info. We don't have sponsors on our podcast, or, I don't think you guys, this is just general entertainment and helping people out. Same with my Instagram page. I'm just giving out cool pictures and helping people out.
Well, it's wild. Like, I'm sure the people that were commenting that maybe you had to delete or were really just firing for effect, those aren't like moose guides that are packing out 120 pound quarters. Like,
one of the first
it's
guys
exactly like you said, somebody, it's homie that killed a doe last year.
Clay Lancaster, the NWT Outfitters. I help him out. He's like my brother. First thing he's like, yep, dude, no brains, all brawn. That's why I love you. And all the guys that I knew are heavy hitters were like, badass, dude, because, it wasn't a manly thing for me. I turned 44 that day. So I was like, hey, let's see if I can still do this. Right. And part of it was that. And most of it was like, I just wanted to see if I could break the frame.
If you've had that much weight on your back, all right, that's pretty fucking cool.
Well, and with any of the stuff we're talking about, like you were saying, if somebody approached you in your street, you just walk by. The thing is it's not going to happen on the street.
No, it never will. Because they also know I have a sub-second draw from the concealed. So it's like at the end of the day, they're watching this. They probably know, man, I really don't want a hole in my head. That's probably something I don't really want. And
which me shooting a pistol is a lot like you shooting that wall. As depressing it as is. That is my nemesis. I'm good with any rifle. With a pistol, if we ever go to the range, you're going to be behind me saying, "Hey, dipshit." Everybody has their strong points. But again, with what we're talking about, if you just want to get in the outdoors, minus poaching, it's a good thing.
It's
right?
a good thing.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, following the laws and everything else, but you are, and if you're a sphere of influence and you're getting people into the outdoors, that's a good thing. Because you think about it, the way we're going now, Nintendo belly seems to be a lot worse now than it was. We were both raised in logging communities. We didn't have Nintendo. I had a chainsaw, right? I was falling trees at 12 years old and cutting firewood because we had a wood stove. Now, things are a lot different. So trying to pass on some of those traits is important. So arguing about some of the other stuff is like, I'll just read it and laugh. I don't have time for it.
Oh, and it's funny because you're right. When I was growing up, I think my mom might have rented a Nintendo for me on like my 8th or 9th birthday. I forget what it was, but I'd never had a gaming system in my house. We didn't really have a lot of channels. We didn't have satellite. So for us, there was never really a motivation to stay inside because we couldn't really watch TV and there was nothing really on it to watch.
Yeah.
How
old are you?
I'm 43 or 44.
We're close
44.
to the same age. And
you grew up in Oregon, right?
Oregon, Detroit Lake, 200 people.
Mm-hmm.
So, trying to explain when people ask, not necessarily motivational leadership speeches and things. A lot of it is we picked mushrooms for school clothes, right? We split firewood. We did things that now would be like, like I was running around picking like morels and chanterelles and things like that. We'd sell because we didn't have a lot of money. I mean, was I envious of kids that had money at that time? I was, but I wouldn't change any of it now because it's good work ethic. And I mean, again, like how many people nowadays do you know that can't change their oil or can't start a fire, right? I mean, it's
can't do any of that.
Call AAA to change a tire.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
We had that debate. I don't know if we had the debate. It wasn't a debate. My wife and I were having this conversation about in 38 states or something like that. Maybe it's 36. It's considered child abuse if you make your kids do physical activity. And I was like, what? Well, that's what I said. I was
Where's the line
how are they defining that? Because I remember packing wood into the house, like and stacking wood over and over and over cords of it,
4 or 5 cords.
I couldn't swing an axe because I was 5.
Yeah.
But I could carry 2 blocks of wood.
You're giving me flashbacks of my mom saying 3 arm loads before dinner because I had to pack it in. I mean, no shit. My mom would be like, you got to bring in 3 arm loads and you can eat.
So that's why I was thinking about this. And I never thought of that when I was a kid, even as an adult looking back on it. I never thought my parents were being mean to me. It was just part of my chores. So our physical labor today in some ways is considered child abuse in some states by people. And obviously it's all subjective. And I doubt there would be a lot of judges that would think that that's true. But if that's where we're headed, where
it makes me scared.
Can't teach your kids how to do physical things where you can say, hey, go grab this without thinking, well, wait a minute.
No. Sports.
My 7-year-old, she's tough as nails, man. I was riding around the neighborhood yesterday and she ran almost a mile by herself, like back and forth and doing some stuff. Then we took our bikes and went down to this coffee shop in our neighborhood. I got her like a little cocoa and some other stuff. A non-Black Rifle coffee shop, believe it or not. I actually go and go to local businesses other than my own and drink coffee. I'm thinking you can ride your bikes. So if you tell your kids we're going to go for a bike ride, that's
physical activity.
Is that considered? Like what is happening to our society where you're
where's the left and right limit here?
So I had Kennedy on ours the other day, Tim Kennedy. We had most of it was these kind of conversations.
Right.
Because it scares me a lot because, and not just like if you had the top 10 list of being a man, right? Or whatever, or not being chauvinistic, but
couple skill sets.
Some skill sets, like, I think everybody should be able to build a fire, change your oil, split, general stuff, and talk like navigation, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody's got the easy button now, and I get it. I have a GPS on my watch, but learning how to navigate, right? Like there's certain things, especially if you're going to go out in the woods, you need to learn.
Yep.
What's crazy to me is, not crazy, but I knew those before I turned 18. Like I worked on a trail crew team for the Forest Service, and I joined the Army, and it expanded that.
Right.
But where now, like I just made a post. I was like, who would pay $250 for Mike Hearn and I to teach the land nav class?
Yeah.
I think we're up to like 2,000 people that said
Are
yes.
you kidding me?
And so, I told Mike, I'm like, hey, dude, because we're going to start a school with, we talked about that. So I'm like, dude, we might need to rethink that initial maybe 30 people to more, right?
Yeah.
We may need to break this up, but at least that shows there's people hungry for knowledge, which I like. What's really worried about to me, which we're diving off the deep end here, like COVID. I get it. COVID's here.
Yep.
Obesity's here too. Like there's a lot of other things that are here, right? That when I say that, meaning
they're not going away.
Yeah. When you look at things, when bringing up like COVID's real. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I got it, right? I couldn't taste shit for a month or smell. But there's a lot of other issues out in the world too that are causing problems that everybody seems to overlook. Fitness is one of them.
Huge.
Yeah.
And I'm a big fitness guy, and I'm all about fat shaming because I'm naturally a fat kid. If I wasn't fat shamed, I wouldn't have lost weight, right?
Yeah.
Like I need you to say, hey, fat fuck, you're gaining weight. I'm like, yeah, I better hit the gym. I need that.
Right.
You do that nowadays, like you're an asshole, right? You know what I mean? And I get it, but it's like pushing forward and trying to as Tim had said, kind of alter the future by doing one little part at a time, teaching classes, kind of showing people, things that seem to be lost nowadays. Like there's a lot of things that I feel are super lost, and you've been to way more shitholes than I am. People kill for what we throw away every day in other countries.
Every day, I think, and you have to teach kids how to be hard. That's the other thing. You have to teach your kids how to be resilient.
Yeah.
And you have to look for those opportunities to plug in and be an influence to them. So for me, I have two girls, 3 and 7, and I don't want them growing up weak.
Yeah.
I don't want them to be mentally weak. I want them to be physically and psychologically strong people that provide something of substance to humanity. There's a difference too between being just a straight up asshole and teaching your kids how to be tough.
Yeah. Well, and that toughness isn't necessarily just physical, right? Like
no, it's mental.
It's mental fortitude. Yeah. Like the psychological part of it is huge. There's so many. How many times do you turn the news on or read an article and it's depression at an all-time high, anxiety in the workplace all-time high, and a lot of that it's coming from people that are 18, like just getting into the workforce, 18 to 26 years old, and they're anxious about this much work or that much work, or either too much or too little, or am I doing the right thing or am I not? And, maybe that's coming from a lack of mental fortitude and being pushed hard when they were younger. And that's a shame because it's not necessarily their fault.
Yeah.
But somebody has to fix it.
You're right.
Help
I have
them.
My daughter's 19 and she was, thank God, raised around people like us. And also my ex-wife's a preacher, if you can believe that. So she's pretty well-rounded. But people would ask me, like we would do training hikes and she would be there and they're like, why aren't you back with her hiking? And I'm like, I want her to see like the effort it takes to push forward. And, and I got yelled at by hikers once because she sat down in the middle of we do the tower or the fire room.
Oh, yeah.
She laid up on me. And again, I'll probably get yelled at. I was like, get your ass up. And I came back and I'm like, get up. And she, I love her to death, right? She'll listen to this and laugh. And she's like, do we get ice cream? And I'm like, You don't get a participation trophy for getting to the top. Get your ass up there now. She knows I'm going to buy her one anyway. I'm like, Kaylee, do not lay up on me. Go. And a lady walked up. She's like, you shouldn't be talking to your kid that way. And I'm like, that kid's getting to the fucking top and yours isn't. And I'm like, now my daughter and I have a very unique, she's as much as a friend, but it's like, Kaylee, I wanted her at a young age to see what the human body was capable of, as well as the mind. Like you can push through just about anything. You can do it, where a lot of her friends, and I'm not questioning their parenting or anything else, but they're raised differently than we were.
Yeah.
And I want her to be the leader of the pack. I want her to know that she, when times are hard, she can fight through it, where that is definitely leaving you hire people like we do. The younger generation sometimes does freak me out a little bit. Not always, but I get, and it's not their fault. It's how they were raised. Where, again, I mean, sports and everything else. All of those things are important, and I see people now, and I get it. You know that things are changing in the world, but biggest thing for me to go to school was sports. Right? I mean, that was one of the reasons I made it through high school. And it seems like sports now are kind of taking a downturn in some ways too. So,
yeah, and I don't even think it's because I've thought about this quite a bit. I don't think it's one of those circumstances where we're just trying to hold on to the past. That's not it. I think that teaching mental resilience and leadership is a dying art, because people have put that into the narrative of political correctness. Everybody has to get along, and everything that you say has to be politically correct. Everybody gets a participation trophy. You can't teach your kids to be competitive. You can't. Okay, but where is that going? I think as a group psychology, I feel like I'm a relatively happy person that has contributed a little bit to society, generally speaking. I love my kids. I'm really, for me, I really strive to, show love and affection and emotional support and all of those things. But I also strive to reinforce opportunities to teach leadership, mental resilience, and physical strength. Like, how important are those things? To your point, for me, I want my kids to be leaders. My job as their dad is to give them a bunch of skills, emotional support and confidence, psychologically develop them to make sure that they're confident, and more importantly, that they can have the confidence to go out and achieve what they want.
And be independent in
that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I agree totally. And I think, obviously, this is way off the subjects of traditional archery, but I think it's probably more important than traditional archery is when I was a kid, you just had to work, right? There wasn't a lot where I was at. Same with you. I don't know about you, but you had to work some, right? You had to get it. Like, I would look at kids that had their whole life handed to them, and it was I was envious, right? Mm-hmm. As a young kid, I'm like, I can't go to that football camp. We can't afford it. Where now, I'm glad it happened, right? Yeah. I'm glad I had the obstacles. And I say obstacles, my mom loved the shit. I mean, I'm glad I had obstacles because it makes you tougher along the way. And I'm not bashing the younger generation, but it does make me nervous. And again, it's not their fault. It's what they're being told, right? It's how they're being raised or told or whatever else. The participation trophy scares the shit out of me.
It scares the shit out of me where it becomes socially acceptable just to quit and not finish too. Right?
And then get a good job for it.
It's like, I just don't feel like doing this. No, you're going to finish this. You're going to finish it to completion. It makes me nervous when, people continue to have this conversation around, American society, that it's okay just to say, fuck it, because you do you, right? Yeah. It's like, you do you, everything's okay. And it's like, no. Like, my job is to make sure that you understand very specifically what it takes to complete a project that you start. And I really hate that entire narrative of, it's just, it's okay for you just to, when you're uncomfortable, just to quit. And it's like, no, you got to push through some shit. And it starts little things. Like, my kid, we were going skiing the other day.
Those videos are awesome.
She was like walking into the the lodge, and she was complaining about her skis. She's like, "Can you carry these?" I was like, "No, you're carrying them. If you want to ski, you're going to carry your own skis. You got to carry your own weight around here. This is what we do in this family. We carry our own weight." And she didn't like it.
Yeah, but she did it.
She did it, and then guess what? One of the first things she said when she came back carrying her skis, she's like, "I carried my skis," and she was really proud of carrying her own weight, doing her own thing, carrying her shit to completion. But I know if I would have lost that opportunity with her to say, "Yeah, no problem, I'll take them," and it was like 30 yards.
Yeah.
I was like, "You can take a break. If you need to stop and take a break, it's not a big deal, but you're going to carry your own shit up here because you're going to use that."
But it gives them a sense of pride. And we were on one of the Kifaru hike thing, backpacking trip, and a bunch of people showed up. And a couple of the stragglers, I had, I'm not going to mention their name. You probably know them. They were in your line of work. And I stopped and I'm like, "Should we go back and grab their shit and help them?" And he literally was like, "Fuck no." He's like, we'll give them verbal support. There's going to be a badge of honor if they make it. And I'm like, "I'm good with that, dude, if you are." And I said, "Let's stash our shit." And he's like, "What are you, a pussy?" And he was like, "Wait, you lost me. What do you mean?" He's like, "It's good exercise. Just carry your pack back down the hill." I'm like, "Dude, we're coming right back by here." And I'm like, "All right, whatever, I'll carry it back down." But
that sounds like something I would hear.
Yeah, but that's literally like, he had very good points. He's like, "We're going to talk to them and we're going to make sure they make it, but we are not going to carry their shit." And I was like, no. And it was just a true sense of accomplishment when they got there. No different than any challenging task.
Yeah, well, and rotating back to like where we started with archery and hunting, right?
Yeah.
That is something, I'm glad, like I'm newer to hunting, like hunting archery, and I'm glad I got into it because now I can then pass that along also. And I think it's all of our responsibility to do that because it does give people a hard task that is not easy to accomplish and takes a lot of effort, pre-planning and practice to get there. And then if you end up being successful, you feel that sense of accomplishment and want to continue doing that. And I think so many people are hungry for that specific thing.
Well, that's it for me with the stick bow. It's a better sense of accomplishment once I've accomplished the task.
Because how many arrows a day do you have to shoot with that damn stick bow as opposed to a compound for you specifically, right?
I don't have to shoot a compound now at all. I mean, it's like riding a bike. I mean, I'll pick it up and shoot.
But you take a week or two off with a stick bow for any number of reasons, and I'm sure you can see,
you're a little rusty.
let alone feel the difference.
Well,
huge difference.
Oh yeah. And you know, for people listening in, if there was, you know, and we did a little video earlier, should I shoot a stick bow or should I buy a compound? If you were picked last at Foursquare, you know, you're not the most genetically gifted person, you might want to start with a compound. It's nothing wrong with that.
No.
If you're a goal-driven person, you got super good hand-eye coordination and you want to get super close and you're going to be okay with maybe shooting smaller animals or not harvesting or killing as many, get the stick bow. For me, it was weird because I did it as almost on a bet to prove a point. And now I'm like, God, I should have started doing this a long time ago because I'm addicted to adrenaline.
Right.
Yeah.
There's nothing more, nothing. One of the top few things for adrenaline and satisfying is sneaking in within a few feet of an animal. I shot a mule deer at 4 feet. My broadhead was between its horns when I drew back. And literally, this was my first year shooting a stick. And rewind to my first hunt with a stick. I'm 60 yards from a bear, and I'm like, you'd be so fucking dead if I had my compound. And I ended up killing it, right? I got it. But I literally was like, okay, I have got to restructure the way I hunt. Like, I can't just drop a bomb at 60 now. Like, I had to reinvent the wheel. And I'm like, okay, note to self, like, Snyder, you are going to have to change the way you hunt. Because literally, I started 4 months later, I was hunting with a stick bow. And I missed that.
What were you hunting for your first stick bow hunt?
I turkey, the first one, which is a huge shit show. I mean, trad flags everywhere. I ended up killing turkeys, but I'm like, okay. So then we went spot and stock bear in British Columbia. I was with Jeff Lander, and he's a huge stick bow guy,
right?
And he's giving me all these mental, you know, where the hunt ends with your compound, it's going to begin with. And he's giving me, I'm like, okay. So as I'm trying to get to this bear, I'm thinking of all these things he's saying, and honestly, I'm thinking, dude, don't be a bitch. Just keep going. You will get it. Because I'm nothing crazy. Mosquitoes, you know how they are. Getting eaten alive. And I'm back and forth up this hill, and I finally my mouth squeak because I can't get any closer. And I'm not a set of car keys. I'm a big bald fucker, right? I'm like, so I go, and he comes. I'm like, oh my God, it's gonna work, and I'm fucking missed. I was like, what did you? I shot right between his feet, and I'm like, well, he didn't hear the bow go off, and Tom told me, he was like, look, you will get 2 to 3 arrows off at animals.
So damn
Are you serious?
Dude, he was standing on a stump at 18 yards chest to me. I was going to shoot him in the chest. I shot, it hit the stump. He picked his pop and he looked down and was like, and turned broadside. I'm like, oh, I'm not going to miss on this one. And I pinwheeled him. Well, I didn't pinwheel him. I made a good shot.
Right.
That was the best feeling with archery I'd ever had. I'm like, I can do it. Now get your shit together because this is way fucking harder than I thought it'd be. So you got you got an uphill road to hoe. So then we went from that to elk. And with elk, any side thing within 80, it was dead. And we had multiple elk between 40 and 80. And even some shots now I would take now at like 36, 38. Well, finally, in the middle of that, we had to come out of the woods and take a break and shower, and so I didn't get divorced.
Yeah.
I go on a mule deer hunt. I'm like, Frank, you want to go on a mule deer hunt for the day? We go in, we spot a mule deer, he beds, and I'm like, Frank, I'm gonna back out, go way around, 4.5 hour stalk. I end up literally, there's photos on my Instagram. I'm standing here and the deer's at the floor. And Frank, when I finally got to where I was supposed to be, we have hand signs, and I look in the binos and I see Frank, the dude's just loyal. He's doing you're there, dude. And I'm like, okay, I'm here. Now, where the fuck is this deer at? Like, he's giving me I'm there. I see one tine above the rock.
Like, oh shit.
And I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to shoot this thing. I'm going to have to stand it up. So I get to 8-9 yards and I'm throwing rocks. He's not moving his head. And I'm like, I got a 30 mile an hour, 20 mile an hour gust. I'm going to take a step every time it gusts. 10 gusts later, my foot's on the rock. I go to step up and the wind blows me back down. I'm in my socks. Deer didn't move his head. And I was like, so I get on the rock and I was so close, my shadow, they'll think it's a mountain lion.
Right.
Was starting to crest towards his eyes, and I ducked down, and Frank's watching this, and I'm like, I can't draw my bow. The arrow's so close. So I go up in between his antlers and I draw back straight down, and I hear Frank screaming, right? Because I shot it straight through down through the heart. I was like, okay, that did not do any confidence for long range shooting, but that was fucking intense. I was like typewriter leg shaking, and I was like, I'm like, can you believe that? He's like, no, I can't believe that, dude. I saw you shoot a mule deer to 130 yards. He's like, you shot that one at like 5 feet. I'm like, man, this is fucking addictive. Like, so then I shot an elk shortly after that, and some other animals or whatever. But it was one of those things where the more I did it, I'm like, my badge of honor now isn't shooting at something at 100. I'm going to shoot something at 3 feet.
How close can I get?
And I've shot, well, you guys have seen, I've shot a bunch of stuff. I mean, there's nothing, well, that last Outdat I shot, I came in on top of the group. I'm going to shorten this story really far down, looking where they're going to egress. I'm like, okay, I can't get close enough. With a compound, I would have just shot them. And I'm like, I got to figure out where they're going to evacuate the area. I got to figure out where they're going to leave. I go to the spot I think they're going to leave. 13 ewes and lambs walk by me at 18 yards. I'm like, I'm golden. I got this. 2 ewes and a ewe and a lamb come up, and the ewe literally starts bumping her head into my limb tip because they caught movement and they're trying to figure out doing this, looking at me. And
holy
Scotty's
shit.
watching. What was funny, I was on the phone with the governor of Wyoming, the building council, my business partners, and Scotty's like, fucking hurry, because they're on the mountain. They're, get off the phone. I'm like, dude, I can't hang up on Wyoming, right? I got to talk. I get off the phone, get my crap, haul ass up there. You know, an hour later, he's watching, and he's like, Scotty has Topo Texas Outfitters. That's the dude I guide for. He's telling Chad, I think that motherfucker's hitting him in the head. I mean, he's like, what's going on? And so I'm like, this isn't going to end well, like, because they're going to blow out. That's how I killed that ram. It was the lead ram. That lamb blew out, went 20 yards down the hill. It's going, meh. Well, that thing muscled up and just straight to me. I shot it at 9 yards, broadside, because it was coming to see what was going on. And I was like, oh, that was intense. Like in first stock, first day we were down there, and 33, 34-inch Outdat, huge. And I shot one with Scotty the year before at 4 feet. And it wasn't a stock. I ambushed him, but it was literally those kind of things. I'm only telling these stories is that'll never happen to me with a compound, because I'll drop a bomb at 80.
Yeah.
With a stick, I have to get closer.
Right.
And I've become addicted to that. Now, it's not for everybody, but now when I go into a hunt, I'm like, okay, let's see if I can get within a foot
Right.
of this thing. Not all hunts. I mean, some I'm like dropping a 40-yard bomb because I just can't get any closer. But most of the time,
A 40-yard bomb.
yeah, 40s. I hit that javelina at 57. It literally looked like. I mean,
Jesus, that's not a big animal.
Well,
No.
and it's a
They
pig.
have
So,
like they're
Yeah, it's a pig.
but Scotty was like, "Good Lord, how long was that arrow in the air?" And I was like, "I don't know, dude. It was far." And I have an aiming system. 40 is my point on, and then I know how many arrows above for different distances.
Right.
On a bet, I wouldn't have said I would have pinwheeled it, right?
Right.
But I 12 ring, and I was like, "Oh, that was cool." But then one of the other pigs I shot was like 4 feet, and then it charged me, and it's just an adrenaline thing. And when I say adrenaline, meaning I get more out of the kill or the harvest, whatever you want to call it, than I did with a compound. And there's nothing wrong with either one. But that's why I'm addicted to it now.
Well, it makes a lot of sense because there is a certain amount of evolution, I think, too, because just like anything, when you get more proficient, you're looking for an additional layer of challenge.
Yeah.
And then when you hit the end of the road, well, okay, so how can I challenge myself even further? How can I push myself even further?
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things that I really like about, the group of hunters that I follow. I know them, right? So I know you, I know John, the other guys that I hunt with, like Trevor, John Barklow, or all these other weirdos. Like, these guys are really fucking good hunters. And one, that elevates your ability to hunt, especially when you're around guys that are really proficient. And
No
it's
different than playing basketball
Yeah.
against them.
Yeah.
You play to
Yeah.
the level of your opponent or who's around you.
What do you do in preparation? Which sounds like a dumb question, but
No, I know what you're going to ask. It's not dumb. Go ahead.
so what's your prep going in? Because you want to get as close as you can. So
Yeah.
one of the things that I always think about is, dude, do you leave your clothes out in the middle of nowhere and like not shower, or like what in the like?
So the biggest thing, honestly, is things you might not think of is one, the noise your clothes makes. Like,
Right.
I don't worry about scent because I at all.
Right.
14-day backpack hunt, your shit stinks. I mean,
Yeah.
but I worry about the wind.
Right.
That's not something I have to practice. The noise my clothing makes, the things you don't think about, what your arrow hits when it bumps off the rest,
Right.
how much noise, what can I walk through with socks? Do I need to wear more of I have some Vibram Aqua socks that I put big socks over
Right.
for different terrain, cactus, right?
Yeah.
I have a set, a guy, Wesley Warner, made me that are felt, and I put carbon insoles in them so the cactus won't go through my feet, things like that. So my prep, other than, fitness and shooting, is really, okay, and it'd be funny if you filmed it, because Amy will see me peek over a cliff at our house and just whip an arrow off.
Right.
She's like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Well, if the deer's looking up, I gotta wing one quick." So I'm working on abstract things that I know from experience are going to happen. Not the things a lot of people think about, but what I needed. Will my bow pop at full draw? Like, you hear the limb pop?
Yeah.
That'll blow a deer out quick.
Right.
Like, when you're sub 10 feet, it's a different world when you're sub 10 yards.
Right.
Oh, that makes
And so
sense. Yeah.
I'm more worried about, honestly, noise. And again, when I say noise, everything. Like,
Right.
a guy, Matt Davis, he lives here. He blew a 190 deer out. He got too close too quick, and his nose was, so you can't, so he's about the 15th wipe. He brushed his, and if you hear this,
Yeah.
well, you hear that, and you're a deer and you're there to live.
Right.
That thing blew out from a thumb touching a bino harness. So those are the things you see. South Cox, he gets naked all the time. Dude's in his underwear.
I've seen a number of videos of him stalking in on mule deer in his freaking underwear and socks.
Yeah.
Because the skin is quiet.
Yeah.
Now me, my legs, I'll just show you, the camera can't see. I will scare deer off because those legs are white. And so I dropped my pants once, and Frank's texting me, "Put your fucking pants back on, bro. Deer are running. Those are two beacons from here." Yeah.
Fluorescent.
Lord, I need to tan more. But I literally work on those type of things more than, it's a very good question. Because if your bino harness clicks or something abstract like that, and you're getting sub 20 yards, especially sub 10, that's what's going to blow the animal out. If you physically already got there, the fitness part's out of the way. It's truly, when you get in that close, when you talk about a game of cat and mouse is over. I mean, there's no more catting and mousing. Like you're really that last foot the cat strikes.
Right.
Is that movement the wrong movement? Was the cat looking, was the animal looking at the cat, whatever. When you're that close and, like I said, the animal hears this, he's going. And so that silence and how quiet you are is really more important than anything, which I don't know if that answers your question exactly. But
no, it's interesting because how do you train for that other than just stalking animals?
So this is weird. To practice it, the best thing you can possibly do, which if you have a really cool wife like I do, she sits down there. I'm like, can you hear that?
Right.
And my poor wife, I have her down listening to veins. Hide behind that tree. Which one's louder? I'm not. And she's like, three's loud, 2 is good.
Right.
And I'll fly her 6 arrows for my vein configuration. She's out there filming me with my arrow flight.
Right.
All of those things. Now, is it the same as an animal? The animal's where, your rubber meets the road and you really learn. But to get prepped for that again, snapping how loud is your knock when you snap it on your string? Mm-hmm. It's fucking loud.
Yeah.
So you do that at 20, your stock's over. You got to do it early. So those are the things.
Well, I mean, like, I took that stalker stick out for elk this last year. We didn't get a chance to even draw on one, but I had thought about a couple of those things because I think I had heard you mention some of that stuff. Mm-hmm. So I know that my bow, the very first time I draw it back in the day, will kind of do a little bit of a creak snap.
Yeah.
So first thing out of the truck that I did is I'd draw it back a couple times and get all that shit out of that thing.
Yeah. Yep. All
that stuff worked out of that system.
Yep.
And then even if we thought we heard something, I'd knock an arrow. Yeah. Like, all right, it's on there. Now we're good.
Yeah. And I'm not... this isn't like a manly thing when I'm talking like this is, I'm badass and I fucked up a lot to learn this. Like the collective of experiences, it's like, look, dude, I didn't pop out of the womb. I blew like 40 animals out to learn that. You know what I mean? It's like when I'm telling you this isn't my opinion or bro science. Like I blew a 220-inch mule deer out, knocking my knock.
Yeah. Well, you got to like, I'd like to have everybody listening that's newer take stocks.
Yeah.
Don't freak out, unless it's like the one of a life, some freak animal, take a chance because you're not going to learn how not to do it by not doing it.
Yeah.
Well, the interesting thing is I started doing that even when I wasn't hunting, just trying to get close to animals, right? Just trying to hunt, just trying to stalk.
Yeah.
It reminds me of what we used to do to our gear.
Yeah.
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 You'd take your gear and you would go through every ounce of gear that you had, and you would wrap anything that could squeak in tape, right? So you'd use moleskin, riggers tape, and you would quiet everything. So and that was a whole exercise that you would go through everything and run through your gear and walk through it and tape everything off. And
jump up and down.
That program I told you I was working on, that's one of the number one things they ask. Right. How can I get quieter? Because when they're moving on the X, right, like noise, it's big. Mm-hmm. And I didn't really think about it at that time, but I'm like, I guess if you can get a few feet from a deer, you got somewhat figured out. Yeah. So like, buckles.
Oh, yeah.
Waxing them. You put wax on a buckle on the bino harness, that takes away the noise. Your limb popping.
Yep.
Take the limb off. You want to put wax on the limb pocket. That takes away that pop.
Right.
Things like that where I'm not sucking in anything shooting back at me, and I'm nowhere at the level you guys were, but I learned some of that from the military, but most of it was blowing fucking animals out, right? Because I wasn't in the Army in combat time, right? I missed it. I was in the Clinton administration time frame where you're just traveling around training, right? And when I got out, I had a base level of knowledge from the years that I was in, but I tell you what, blowing fucking giant animals out will definitely help you learn, especially you're already 8 miles in and you just blew a stock 3 miles from camp. You want to talk about the cone of shame. Like, I got to fucking do this again tomorrow. Like, doing something stupid.
And it's always little shit too, right?
Right.
Like, it's stuff like you're saying, like wax on there, or like holding a fast tech after it's already been buckled and releasing it as opposed to snapping it through. Yeah. Like, I don't know how many times I've heard people snap stuff through. I'm like, bro, just
like, hey,
just hold on to the backside, you idiot.
Hold it.
What the fuck are you doing?
Well, the other thing, too, that when you talk about prep, which this is something nobody thinks about, like, I don't, you guys go through, what is it called? Target detection or whatever for, snipers and shit. So finding it is one thing. Walking to that motherfucker is another one.
Yeah.
And so some of the courses that I teach, I'm like, okay, we're going to glass and we just found that rock. Your ass has got to go from here to there without my help. What are you going to do? Well, for me now, I take a photo with my cell phone blown out. I put a dot on it. I zoom it in, and now I do my approach. And so I can look at, now it's backwards, but it still works. The next thing I do is I shoot an azimuth past the deer or sheep to the largest point I can. I take a back azimuth and I put a BF-17 panel or whatever on my pack. So when I circle back, I'm shooting my back azimuth and I know it's in line.
Right.
Where I'm at, I range. This is super anal, but you got to do this shit with a stick bow.
Right.
I range everything I can and I have a notepad and I write that down. So when I peek over and I can see that rock, if that rock was 680 yards from where I am, the deer was 30 yards past it and I'm 100 yards past that, I pretty much can drop a J-dam on that fucker. Like I know right where it's at. Otherwise, I'm going in with hope. Like, it's fucking in here somewhere. Left or right, I don't know. Where now I have a pinpoint and nobody practices that.
Well, that's I think we used to call those range cards, right? So
those range cards.
Yeah, so
like
you would identify it and you draw, you do the whole thing, but obviously you're not moving to that place. You're just doing surveillance and then talking to somebody, right? But that's really interesting. I didn't think about that. Well, that VS-17 panel on your pack, shooting a back azimuth and looking at your entire route, I would have never got there.
You do, and I say this in lighthearted but funny, you blow out 3 or 4 deer, you're going to become pretty fucking crafty. And that it wasn't like, for me, if I say 9 miles, whatever, 5 miles in, but you've had to go a mile up, climb 1,000 feet, come over, go down cliffs, and nothing looks the same. It's the dark side of it. When you get over there, you're like, is that the bush or is that? So the phone for the photo thing, and I stole that off my recce buddy. He's an artist, drawing. I'm like, well, I'm not an artist, but I'll take a fucking picture. So I took it with my phone, and I'm like, and then I take red dot is the animal, white dot is my potential shot opportunity. I range that if I can.
Right.
So I know my potential shot with a compound is 80 and in. Mm-hmm. With a stick is 40 and in. I put my 40-yard mark and I range that and I put that dot on. And again, that azimuth, that back azimuth is giving me my direct line.
Gives you a lane.
And and then I pop over and I start ranging, and that's when you're solo. And
that is such a good idea, dude. Yeah. That is such a good idea.
Well, again, that's for me fucking up a lot, learning that. And I was fucking up with a compound too. I've just perfected it with the stick. The other thing people don't, think about, like I'm shooting trad, I don't want a rangefinder. If that's your choice, by all means. I don't use it as much for shooting because I can judge pretty good out to 40 because I came up when we didn't have rangefinders.
Right. Yeah.
What I do use it for is, okay, that's 680 yards away.
Right.
And that's 710. All right, I'm in the money when I get to that rock.
Right.
And then I write that on my notepad. And I take lots of notes. So when I come over the top of the cliff, I'm looking at the wind direction where I was, the wind direction where I am, the thermals. I have these wind floaters. It's like cattails. Rather than the puffy thing that lets you show 3 feet, I drop it. So if my wind's questionable, I grab my binos and I watch that float all the way down, and the thermals will change. So you might think you don't have a stock. You drop 2 or 3 of those in 10 minutes, it's going to tell you what the prevailing wind and thermals are doing. And I'm looking at that saying, okay, I can't take the approach I wanted, but I can take this other approach because of what that little stupid thing blowing down the hill told me. We can take approach now from the right. Now, it may be more questionable. The deer may be bedded with his head to the right or whatever, but you didn't just walk over there for no reason, or you just sit on top and keep dropping them until it changes. And then you can make your approach.
Yeah.
So they're wind drifters wind floaters or what they're called.
And where do you buy those?
You can get them online.
Yeah.
A lot of people make fun of me because I pay for them, but we don't have that specific plant in Colorado. So driving to Tennessee to pick it or ordering it on Amazon, I just get it on Amazon. But it's like I say a cattail. It's I can't remember the name of what the hell it's called, but it's super handy. You could use cotton. You can use anything, but that has saved me a lot. And I don't use it all the time, but literally like sheep hunting. I mean, while we're how much time do we have? We're diving down the rabbit hole.
Another half hour.
Like I carry an ice axe walking stick. I'm not doing that because I'm going across the glacier.
So do
I do it for One, I do it in the case of like when we're in WT, when a helicopter comes in, it's just getting the willows out of the way so the tail rotor doesn't hit.
Right.
But seeps to get water. There ain't a lot of water up high.
Right.
So digging out to where we can make, a lot of times we'll take a map or a beef jerky wrapper and then we make a spigot for it to flow down for water because there is none. Digging out a bed, right?
Yep.
To get the tent, things like that, which is it a little heavier than a walking stick? It is, but it's also a lot more, it offers a lot more. And so when we're going into some of these different areas, if there's a lot of times there's no flat spots where we might want to camp to cut down the climb, for glassing, I can dig a bed out with that ice axe. So there's things like that I've just picked up along the way from backpack hunting so much that are huge when I talk about like the seep. If you're getting one drip every 5 minutes, I leave a dry sack down there, which people don't think of dry sacks as a water source. They think of a Nalgene or a water bladder. I take that 55-liter dry sack and I leave that bastard there all day. And, we stack rocks around it. So it may be one drip every 5 minutes, but if I'm gone 12 hours, I have water when I get there.
I remember that because I think you and Barklow went down the rabbit hole on that for a while as far as you guys did a whole podcast or YouTube video, maybe both on procuring water in the high country. Was that you and Barklow or was that you and somebody else? I can't remember.
Barklow.
Yeah.
Anytime
That's a great episode. So if you guys tune into that, they get into this. And Barklow's, he was a winner? What was he?
Diver.
But no, he did the survival
up in Kodiak.
Yeah.
For I don't know, I want to say more than a decade.
So if you guys want to go
he was the man.
Fucking nerd out on this stuff, you guys did at least an hour and a half on that.
Yeah, and anytime I get a subject like that, and I usually get Barklow most of the time with guys that have that experience or are still in or are super busy like you guys, that while I have friends that are with Deb Brewer CAG, I can't just call them and be like, hey, hop on a podcast because fucking they can't be seen. So I usually grab a Barklow or if you guys want to do them like when it's applicable. Because with Barklow, the unique thing with him is he does bow hunt. He's got a great pedigree there. He has a big pedigree as far as training. And even if you know it, sometimes you're not good at explaining it.
Yeah. He's
very good at breaking it down. Yeah. And it's not so nice because we have a lot of the same methodologies. Like we were talking about river crossings the other day with Mike Hearn. And people were listening like, you guys should charge for this. Because I was like, well, I strip naked. And then I fill my dry sack up and then I blow it full of air. I put it back in my pack. So if I eat shit, the pack floats.
Yep.
And if it's really bad, I tie a dummy cord to it to the side I was on. I obviously don't want to tie it to myself, but I tie it. So if I fall, it just pivots down on the shore. This actually happened to me before in Washington where I can walk back and go get it. You're out there naked with a innie because you're freezing to death, but you can get your shit. A lot of people are like, they just walk across the river. I'm like,
they're soaked.
Oh, you've never died. I mean, you've never been close to death. I'm like, what the fuck? Get naked, man. Like, why are you walking with your shit? It's going to take 3 days to dry your boots out. We just try to teach that stuff to people. And again, the longer you're in the backcountry, just like anything, the more you learn. And you don't really learn it until you've fucked up and then you learn it that's the best way to learn it, I think.
It's important to get that stuff out there. I mean, like the walking stick ice axe thing I picked up from Cole.
Yeah.
Because I've been up there guiding with him. I'm like, Cole, why do you have walking sticks and the ice axe walking stick?
Yeah.
Like, oh man, like, it's for all the things you just described.
Yeah.
It's like, and then when I'm carrying a rifle, I just stick my walking stick here and like I can just like throw the sling on the stick and then I can like draw it real fast over my shoulder. And it's not just like, hitting me in the hip and like bouncing all over the place.
Or strapped to the pack.
Exactly. And it's not strapped to the pack where it's useless.
Yeah.
It's freaking useless in bear country. It just is. And I mean, for everybody listening, Stubai, Stubai makes that ice axe walking stick.
Yeah. They actually,
just FYI.
Not to take away from the Stubai.
Yeah.
I used the Stubai for years. That New Zealand mountain gear or mountain stick.
That's right.
Dude, whoever built that, it's been some fucking time climbing mountains. Because I was like, when he sent it, I was like, hey, dude, once Kifaru gets our crap together, I'm ordering 100 of these.
I totally blanked on that one.
Yeah. But, no, it's new. It just came out. But bigger carbon tube and it's taller. So you can hold a larger shelter up with it.
Yeah.
The other thing that's nice that, when
It's called a New Zealand walking stick.
No, it's from New Zealand. It's mountain gear. It's called a mountain stick.
Okay.
Yeah, they're bad. I looked at them. They're badass.
I was very impressed to the point, like, I literally was going to design one, and he sent that, and I'm like,
Never mind.
fuck. I'll be copying him. I can't do that. But there's other things that walking stick that people don't think about. If you're in a place or a point when you have that walking stick, because it is durable, it won't bend.
Yeah.
We've hung game meat off of it, things like that, over a creek to cool it off. Breaking down game is another thing that people, they're worried about. Like when I carried that sheep the other day, I had a ton of guys just saying a trophy hunting piece of shit wasted the game. And I'm like, the guts weren't at like 10 minutes. Like, it doesn't hurt anything.
Right.
But my first thought was defensiveness. My second thought was, Jesus, how many people are wasting animals because they found it in an hour with the guts in it and they think it's bad. Well, when we break down game, if you just take all the game and put it all in a bag, the outside may get cooler, but the inside stays warm. So the main thing when you're breaking down an animal, deboning, get the animal, get the meat, and lay it out as much as you can. Obviously, if bugs are bad, it's different, but lay it out and get it to drip and get it to cool off.
Right.
If you can't and you put it in a dry sack and you hang it up, or a game bag, it's still the meat in the middle will a lot of times go bad. You have to wait a while. The outside cools off. Take the meat out, restack it, pull the meat out of the middle, get it to the outside because it's conductive in there. It's just holding it in. Once it's cool, people think of like a sleeping bag as it keeps you warm. It doesn't keep you warm. You're warm and it keeps that inside.
Yeah.
If the meat is cold, the bag keeps it cold. So your sleeping bag is a cooler. So you can use your bag to keep the meat cool if you've got it cooled down. The other thing is the creek. I keep a dry sack, and putting your meat in a creek in a dry sack, it's like a refrigerator, just to make sure. So when we stay, we keep hunting 5, 6, 7 days after we've taken an animal down because we're able to, keep the meat cool and not have it go bad. Those are all things we just pick up along the way. And a lot of guys, they kill their animal like, I got to get out. And I'm like, well, your buddy's got a tag.
Right.
The meat's going to go bad. And I'm like, dude, you got snow over there. You got a creek here. You got an ecothermal corridor over here.
Right.
Debone it, lay it out, it'll cool down, and then it's going to be fine.
Yeah.
It was just in that thing.
Yeah, exactly. So that's just stuff that you just learn over time. So
what have you not hunted that you want to hunt? That's like your
spot and stock brown bear with a recurve.
Oh yeah.
Number one. So
are you going to do that?
One was doll sheep with clay, but COVID has screwed all that up.
Right.
And then the other ones, with the brown bear, it's really going to COVID and fitting in. I talked to Cole about going.
Yeah.
I've got a few other buddies that are, good. I really just, the adrenaline portion of it is big. And just being 20 yards from an animal that size is pretty
That's going to be...
They're pretty epic.
It's going to be an intense ride. We're going up in May. So
yes, we are.
Yeah, that'll be cool.
Yeah, we're going up in May. We're going to try, hopefully. Keep my fingers crossed in that, making sure that we're at least going to take something out of there. Maybe because it's Matt, myself, and Logan. So it's 3 of us with Cole. So hopefully
Is Matt is he into hunting much?
Yeah, he is. Yeah. He's definitely over the last couple of years, he and I have really turned it on. It's a matter of schedule for us. And he tore his bicep
I almost
6 months ago
because I tore mine. He doesn't know me well enough because I'm like, dude, I did this, and I was going to give him some advice on recovery. He got through everything okay, but
you couldn't shoot a bow, so he was planning on coming up here. We were supposed to go elk hunting in Utah, and he couldn't come because he had torn his bicep. Plus his dad. It was going to be my dad, his dad, he and I were just doing this father-son hunt up here, but COVID, and he tore his bicep. So he ended up coming up, and we drove around, and ultimately we ended up just talking shit to Logan and Jocko. That's basically what we did. I think everybody was out there, and we had a blast. But this next year we're doing a couple pretty good hunts. I think we're gonna have. He went out, killed an elk later in the year, and then I think his old man might have killed a whitetail with him. But he kills axis are invasive species in Texas.
Yeah.
So I don't know how many he kills on a monthly, but a lot.
That is really good meat too.
Yeah. Every time I go there, he's got 2 freezers full of Axis, and he's got another one, and because you can kill them at night too.
Yeah.
So we'll drive around with, looking for them in the evening,
The correct
and
equipment.
Yeah, and so there's never a shortage of Axis meat in Texas at their
literally
ranch.
probably the best meat on the planet too.
Seriously, it's so good.
Did he look like Hellboy when he finally got healed up? Because my left arm was really little and my right arm was big. It was almost depressing, like I wore long sleeve shirts because my left arm was so little by the time it healed up.
Yeah, he had posted something about he did a side-by-side comparison. It's like, well, the problem is you're working out too much before. So if you just like chill out with that, and then you're going to just matchy.
Yeah.
But he got through it fine. You can still see the scar right here on his left forearm. But this year we've got a ton of we had a ton of really cool hunts. I'm going out to Colorado, like southern Colorado. I've had some property in my family in New Mexico for 100 years.
Yeah.
And there's a small herd on that. So I'm going to go down there. Got a few really cool hunts this year. I hate to do it, man. We're out of time.
I hate to say it. I got to take a pee break.
I know. I'm about ready to piss my pants.
Starting to get
Aron
antsy.
Snyder, where can everybody find you, man?
So on Instagram, it's ARON_SNYDER. Facebook, Aron Snyder, and then Kifarucast, the podcast, Kifarucast YouTube page, and then Kifaru International is the company that I'm one of the owners of. So yeah, feel free, hop on if you have questions. I do my best to get back to everyone. So I appreciate you guys having me on though.
Yeah, the gear is rad. So
Yes, it is.
go check it out, man. Go check out Aron. He's got some rad videos. He's got some amazing content. His podcasts are incredible. Thanks a lot, man. Really appreciate it.
Thank you guys. I appreciate it.